podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Rajee.
All right. So as we're recording, it is the observation day, Martin Luther King Jr. birthday. Just for the record, I believe Martin Luther King's actual birthday is the 15th of January, but our observation falls on this third Monday, which every once in a while lands on the same time as the inauguration of the next president. And so, also, I guess, as we're recording this, the various festivities and parties and activities and things related, outside of just the actual passing of, civil authority to one Donald Trump and everything that goes with that. And I think, there's a couple issues, I think, just to talk about this moment that we, were reflecting on and reading on. One of those, or at least one I think is most salient, is the tech industry and maybe sometimes pejoratively or otherwise the tech bros or the tech kind of tech CEOs, at least some of them, in many ways lining up, financially backing the Trump campaign, and then to the other end of that arc, I think, which we talked about a little bit in the previous episode or recently, the Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, other folks who are definitely in the mix. Well, I guess maybe Bezos not so much, but telling you the newspaper you own not to print a endorsement tells me that you wanted to pick a side a little bit. And it's a fascinating circumstance. It's a couple things you sent me. It's one of the things I did some scoping around, and I think that was that Mark Andreessen in the in the Timesies, and I see some others. Zuckerberg's thing with by removing the censorship, we're going to make the internet more masculine or something, whatever.
Yes.
Boy, they was talking about. So it's just a real thing happening, right? And I think it bears, at least some discussion. And, I had some thoughts on the piece, but I guess I want to maybe pass to add on, then I'll, come back and we'll get into it a little bit.
Yeah. And remind me to loop back to something about MLK Day.
Okay, we'll do.
Before we talk about that other goofy shit.
Absolutely.
So, I think it's interesting. I think a lot of this is a proof of how Donald Trump has moved the Overton window of what's acceptable in America.
Mm-hmm.
8 years ago, the very same person who said the very same things, and some things were frankly a little less tame than what he started to say later. I mean, 8 years ago, we talked about bad hombres and, the beginning of stuff about Mexicans. We didn't really have a whole bunch of stuff besides him just being kind of a class A pervert, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot because it wasn't a lot to have. And the general idea was that this person was not qualified to be the head of the free world.
Mm-hmm.
And only 8 years later, there is and I think, again, he got millions of votes at that time. He got millions of votes at that time. He got millions of votes in 20 and millions of votes in 24. It is also important for everyone as an example of the Overton window moving. He won by 1.5%. For context, Joe Biden won by 4.5% in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a landslide by any means.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have talked about, and I've said to anyone who will listen, if you dig deep enough, you will find missing voters, and I don't mean fraud. I will mean people who voted in 2020 who did not vote in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
They actually all happen to be in largely black cities. And the turnout wasn't depressed by any kind of fraud or anything. I'm not saying that. It was more depressed by a whole host of things on the internet, which we've discussed at length. But anyway, the window has been moved 8 years later. Everyone thinks this is fully acceptable. In 2016, all the tech companies said they would not do business. They would not rock out. 8 years later, they're all rocking out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be true, some of that is a representation and an acknowledgement of what I'm going to call the increasing sophistication of the Donald Trump machine.
Mm-hmm.
In 2016, he didn't have a sophisticated machine. He didn't have people with him who also were part of the swamp. He didn't have anyone that's part of the swamp. He said he would get rid of the swamp.
Yeah, we're going to drain it.
He's going to drain it. Now he's come back with alligators.
Right.
Right? He came back with alligators. He said he was going to get rid of the swamp. He came back with alligators and frogs. And I do think that has something to do with his ability to interact with many of these people. There was a profile on Stephen Miller the other day that talked about how, like, Stephen Miller would call certain tech folks every day of the last 4 years, like in his non-political, quote unquote, perspective. So I think there's a lot to be said for him just developing a machine and having animals in the swamp that could do his bidding, and it is more sophisticated. And I want to note that, because I think we would be irresponsible if we don't acknowledge that what's about to happen is much more sophisticated, much in the way that when President Biden came in, he came in with a crew that had books that knew what they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They had ideas that were developed in think tanks that were developed over years and knew what they wanted to do when they got power. In the same way, Donald Trump has a machine that is clear what they can do, what they think they can get away with in the name of power. So I want to put the hardcore political stuff to one side and kind of get to where you and I have been.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is the lack of an actual center of the titans of our time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so if you didn't like a guy in 2016 and he's saying the same stuff, while he has given permission structure for crazier shit, it's actually that you've moved more to him. He hasn't moved more to you. And so we have to ask what happened in the last 8 years where the moral center of the tech titans of our time have moved from this is not how we're going to be to we want to make the internet more masculine. From people who benefited from being part of the Democratic Party and being the kind of brain trust of the Democratic Party to now being fully engaged in the MAGA space. And not just Republicans, because there's a difference. I think sometimes people are like, oh, they turn Republicans. Many of these folks are not Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
They're just engaged in the MAGA space in the context of their interests.
Yeah.
So I do think, I know you'll add on it. I do think it's a representation of the lack of center of the industry that is the industry of our time. That it's not like it's not U.S. Steel, what also happening here. It's not these companies that we think about. It's now tech companies and their role in shaping society, and this huge shift over to this again, because they've said it, so it's not us making it up. This like more masculine, interesting identity around government and structures that is befuddling, but not befuddling if you truly understand kind of what those companies, how they came about and what they were made of. So that's kind of like my take.
Yeah, because it's like listen to that the Andreessen piece and another and a couple other scourings and scrapings and trying to dash through processing the Zuckerberg stuff. And it's the thing that always bothers me. I think that's the best word to say. Maybe bothers me is actually I mean let me go with a stronger word. It really pisses me off when someone who's in charge of something and has power behaves like they don't have power. Right, like you're the head of a giant.
That's a
Uh,
good point.
you're the head of a giant venture capitalist firm, and act like we're at the mercy of whatever. Like you've invested hundreds, millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and then like play the like we weren't sure about our power and our position and the whomever can just take us out. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, you know what I'm saying, Warren Buffett over there like, really, dog, take you out for real. You know what I'm saying? Name any very wealthy, super wealthy, either familiar or whomever by familial channel or otherwise in American history who's like actually been, like maybe not at the prominence of public esteem, maybe no longer at the center of maybe the juice, right? In the juice in the story of what's driving the economy.
I like how you said that. Just the juice.
You know what I mean? Because like
You could be like a sport. You could be like a sports. You could be like a sports guy for that shit. You just said. The juice.
you know what I'm saying? Because if you was like a if you was one of the Vanderbilts that didn't blow the money, you know what I'm saying, in the 70s,
Right.
right? Like you don't nobody like people that know the damn Vanderbilts, here comes another one of them, you know what I'm saying, or whatever other last name that people in that world know you a descendant of that bread.
Right.
Like you ain't hip even though you got all this money. Right. So people are not coming to you. I mean, as dramatized in like a show like Succession or even Billions, where you could have all this wealth but still want a certain level of public accolade and esteem, or being perceived as the center, of what's driving or making things happen, right?
Right.
So it really bothers me when someone with those levels of again access to capital and control of things that happen to people got the nerve to get on somewhere and start talking about they felt threatened by some government functionary that came and said we might do an investigation or this or that. Like, yeah, like, okay, I mean, I'm if they were using their power to investigate and do the people's work to make sure you're not you know doing something slimy, dirty, inappropriate with what you have. I mean, have some how you say, have some steel in your spine, my man. Like if what you're doing is on the up and up, what you worried about government? I mean, I know why you should be, because they've destroyed people have destroyed. Here's how I'll say it: they know that they use the power not just of their financial position, but also the regulatory bullpit, court systems, all these other tools to squash their competitors. Therefore, ergo,
Right. But you're
they
right. To
know
your
what it
point, they
means.
actually do know what happens.
They know what it means when someone in the attorney general's office says, well, we want to take a look at your books. We're going to open up an exploratory thing just to get an idea, do like a profiling, relaying the land to see around, because we're really concerned about, fill in the blank issue that's happening here, right? But it bothers me when folks like that, instead of speaking to it in like, yeah, we know we worried about government oversight because sometimes government oversight could destroy you even when you ain't do nothing wrong because of public perception that you did something wrong, right?
Which is what we understand when people thought about the overreach of government
Mhm.
investigations traditionally.
Yeah,
What that has meant. Yeah.
yeah, because for our community, typically all it takes is, oh man, you heard what's naming him, and they looking into his files, making sure they ain't up to nothing. You know what I'm saying, or up to something. Whatever as it pertains, or to the degree that position in municipal authority and other things are sometimes the areas where our community may see a higher percentage of observable public power and authority, and then to see that the super what is it they like, yeah, you getting investigated on day one. Like you ain't even finished getting sworn in already as the mayor of something or the commissioner or something or the governor or somewhere, and they already got it open. They already opened investigations to make sure you ain't do nothing wrong. Like you ain't even got to the office to choose your pins yet, right? So like that juxtaposition, because that's what if we're talking about government interfering with your operations, that's what we're talking about, right? That you can be investigated, you can be scrutiny, people can start filing comments on open, what's the name? What do they call them joints? When there's like there might be findings. What about those findings? Or public information requests. There's all these things, right, that can become gum in the works of the actual operation of a business that's trying to do a thing. So now that I've established that, so hearing that, and this sense that we, or a large contingent of the tech leadership community, like instead of getting the message from operating at the Trayvon Martin era, that first bloom in the back end of the second Obama administration around Black Lives Matter, and I want to say this with fun because we got to smile and laugh sometimes when somebody with a really high level of education who was making six figures came in and told you was a capitalist racist and it was calling you out in meetings, talking about you need a rest day, and I've y'all are stressing me out, and you ain't know what to do with it, right? So you call it, you like, oh, the radical, they've been radicalized by the institution.
That does not stop being hilarious,
But
man.
it's because that's the only way
It's
I
true.
can.
No, it's absolutely. And I just want to touch on that for a second because it's hilarious, but it's also part of what was going on in the Democratic Party around Israel and Hamas and the issue of Palestine. Because I don't want to just make it about Israel and Hamas because I think you can obscure people.
Yeah.
If you just say Israel and Hamas, that's just like, the Lakers and the Bulls. That's Drake and Kendrick.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're just talking about these two forces, right? Like the Super Friends and the other people that was against Super Friends. I don't even know what name they had.
Right.
Or they had a name actually. Just all the people who didn't like the Super Friends that they had that other location, right? So, but that is a real thing about when you start to look at those movements, which was a huge thing because it was the first time that you started to see movements around Palestine and around North Africa and the Middle East. Because I think we should talk about it like that too.
Mm-hmm.
That ain't had nothing to do with black folks.
Right.
I'm gonna say it like that.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with black folks. Black folks have been, part of the moral compass and the moral conscience, not all of it. But you found when you look at a lot of the colleges, these was just straight cash. These was white kids. These were rich white kids. The white kids that was like taking a stand, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a little bit of 68 in some of this. And I think it's important for us to think about what happened in 68. What happened in 68 when a lot of young white folks were opened up to the reality of America? America shifted.
Mm-hmm.
Like it didn't go unnoticed.
Yeah.
We got Nixon.
Yep.
We got the Southern strategy. Like we got a set of things when young white people start telling other white people, we don't like this.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's an accident today.
No, I don't know.
I just wanted to share that part of it because you're right. But underneath it is like, this wasn't, frankly, a multiracial structure of what we're talking about, although obviously you're organizers, and I want people to be very clear with this. There are people, organizers of all kinds, that are and have been doing that work. I'm talking about when you looked at the people who were getting arrested, the stuff that was happening at Columbia, at insert university, that it was that, and to your point, and it is hilarious. They had people in there telling them what to do to them when they need a rest day, and go get some red cake for Juneteenth and all the other shit.
Yeah. What to me, and it gets to this thing where it's like, and especially when, and I went around because I was like, he's talking about this like I want to feel like a good person, and and which goes to goes to sort of classic. Moderate liberal thought that like I'm a good person. I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person. Which who yeah and some other probably moderate conservatives think they're good people too. I think it's a shared idea that like I just don't want that homeless guy staying down there by the Safeway. But I care about him. I mean whatever it may be, fill in X in thing you're discomforted with. So just for anyone that's listening that didn't get that. And so, like, listening to that piece, and I went, looking around, like, see where this kind of language is coming up again. It gets to a thing that to me is not too much divergent from somewhere along the line in the lane that I had political access, and I thought myself to be, different from the past, and and I think because I'm in tech, I think that all our decisions are driven by engineering and meritocracy of ideas, and it's not animated by like racism. We don't think like some people aren't as good as other people, you know what I mean, and these sorts of like this sort of ideology that if you're getting to the end of stuff, and then obviously say in uh and in that particular interview, and kind of leaning on it like, oh well, the capitalism is like a net good, and so it's not bad if we sell whatever we're selling, and people make profit, and it raises the floor. All this jargon that gets into almost absolving the idea that we have choices within the decisions that we make from a public policy and structural perspective, right? So that if things aren't working out for some people, the continual subtle idea that it must be their fault, even if we can be like, well, they may have did everything right and still got screwed. It's like no. It's like no, yeah, it's pretty. We kind of roll with that. We kind of accept
Right.
that you could do everything more or less. That like, those all seem like good decisions, and then something just derail your stability. And I'm taking a long road to get to this. It gets to a place where I'm like, but aren't you in charge down there? Like, so if you this feel that from a like you deciding to tell us and being very vocal and everything else about who you're donating money to and why, and then the other party trying to do these things to us, and then citing it as, we need to move, you know, quite, and I guess I'll give him credit for this. We need to move the country more right or conservative or whatever. We need, asserting, that there's um, a overreach, which I'm always suspicious of sometimes of people's constructs of the concept of overreach, because it's like not that overreach doesn't happen. It's just I just like when people are specific about the overreach.
Well, it's when they get uncomfortable, right? And that's it's an interesting term that I myself challenge. I struggle with at times, right? Because I sometimes think, is it overreach, or do I just not like it?
Yeah,
Because it could be some stuff that I don't like, but it doesn't mean it's overreach.
yeah,
And can I just insert this
yeah.
real
Just
quick?
go for it. Yeah,
So I think one of the things people should take from this is that you're playing a power game, right? And I what I do think is that part of the process of after George Floyd was murdered on television, and instead of dealing with state violence, we decided to give more grants to black businesses and give holidays, which I will stand on. Like, I just think we went from a place that was very specific to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And we never went back to the issue of state violence.
Yeah, we didn't.
And so it went to what was easier to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain worlds where people, you know, like the worlds I'm in, the world you're in, the worlds a lot of us are in, where people use the term like handing over power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to say power is never handed over in the context that it belongs to you if I hand it to you without a problem. If I hand it to you without a struggle, it's not yours. It's borrowed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's not your power. I have loaned you the power to the degree that I'm comfortable with your use of it.
Yep.
And I think a lot of what we're talking about is that very same thing. People were like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, bathrooms. Yeah, Juneteenth. Cool. Wait, you're going to stop me from making money? Wait, I have to put this person instead of that person in. Wait, I have to do environmental scans on everything I do.
Right.
I have to use renewable sources. Hold on.
Right.
Like, and so it's no accident if you're like, you know what? I think we want that power back. And I think what he was saying, what Andreessen was saying in the article is like kind of clear. Like, there was a lot of power given to people, and I don't think those people should have the power to make those decisions. So I've chosen a new person that should have the power to make that decision.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And my thing is, if you just, like I said, if you just be straight, that I don't want it is I don't want to be questioned about decisions that we've made in the public sphere. And you can not want that, but you run a publicly traded company if you do. So people get to ask you questions. Now, what you could do, you could choose not to answer them, right? And however people feel, you could decide. If people feel sort of way about me not answering them, that's on them. Or I don't care that they feel that way. Like, you have options, but to frame the discussion, in this way that almost like those people don't have the right to ask me. It's like, no, people get to ask you questions. I mean, even if you don't have if you're a privately owned company and your neighbor next to your factory is like, yo, dog, what's up with all them canisters? Don't worry about them canisters, Jeff. It's cool. Are you sure? Yeah, it's totally cool. And then 20 years later, we find out the canisters is filled with like sometimes neurotoxin and the frogs is dying. And you be like, dog, we were trying to make the softest polyester, what I'm saying, badges we could come up with. And that's, is what we had to do. Like, or, not, I don't want the polyester industry coming after me. Or I guess you can't. I ain't got nothing.
I was about to say, oh, you want the clothing mafia. We won't never get no sponsorship from no clothing company.
I'm saying Shein right now cutting me off. Cut him off.
Him off.
Yeah. All them dead polyester they sell it on Shein. Cut him off. He'd never fly on our airways. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Like, they will make sure we will never get sponsored by somebody in their family of companies.
Right. It's like these tech companies, and it's an interesting dynamic because I know I get the sense, and and I've read, like as everything since the tech, over the last 25 years, the operation ideas and the breaking models and all that, like, the tech companies are seen within our larger business space as like operating with the cutting edge ideas and and then so that filters in and you get the the optimization and like world, like the Tim Ferriss kind of bucket of stuff. You get the these guys must be coming at it differently and we're not making decisions based on like old stodgy ideas about business. We're disruptors. We're trying to move spaces and blah blah, whatever, all the stuff. And then again, the assignment that because people are successful or highly successful in that world, that not only are their behaviors reasonable or something that we're supposed to sort of align with or admire, that then if we question them, it's like, well, you're not really like in our space. It's like you don't understand like what's going on in here. Like, it's really complicated, high level stuff's happening. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, doesn't take too much time for me. Like, you break down the whole crypto thing, like the basic part. I'm like, okay, it's like a blockchain and it keeps track of the transactions, and it's like a computer that's doing a math problem to create this. So this is how we create the scarcity. Okay, I get it. But then you go like, so is it like money? Do I like spend it? Or do I save it? What do I actually do with it? It's like
Right.
brother, you got to think about it creatively, because the risk side, and you start talking about all sorts of complicated, strange ways where it's like, I can't quite tell if this is an investment property asset or is it a currency? It's like, well, sometimes money can be an investment asset. And anytime when someone starts giving you too many like questions, or like, it starts being like, I don't know, man, my scam alarm sounds like funny money, fellas. You know what I mean? And I've seen, I know there's like special coins, you do this and the transfers and the conceptual idea of what crypto at large is about. But it's been shown, even though some of that community clearly feels differently, that when they had them crypto commercials on the Super Bowl and everything, it was like, hey man, I think this is way ahead of way ahead of where the wheels is at. Like, there's no real tangible. We don't know that this is actually something that people should be putting their hard-earned money into, and the idea that they're investing and saving in something that's going to be quickly valuable. Even if there are ancillary technologies around like security protocols and all kinds of other stuff that are blockchain related, it's a given within that space that testing stuff publicly, losing money on it in the aggregate, right? Meaning that lots of money is invested, but maybe it breaks even or it loses money, but the benefit of also the IP and what's learned in the process and the other things that come along that then creates the opportunity to do another thing, all of that's cool. But when the perception that all of us are supposed to like kind of tolerate the other side of the risk with you, when we're not going to get any of the return, like you're not really sharing. So you want us all to be a part of the like test experiment, and then when we finally find the usable products, the people take it that own it get to take that money, and the rest of us get to go like, oh man, look at them with their they figured out how to get more people driving their cars to transport people, but they're now they're going to try to take as much of the profit as they can, or fill in the blank other technology related.
I mean, one thing to me, I think that technology is by its nature disruptive, and you can take what that means, right? And that
Mhm.
there are winners and losers, and there are winners and losers at the beginning, middle, and end. I think, in joking, but it should come with like the cigarette like warning, right? Like, yo, because the thing is, the whole conversation around TikTok has shown at some point there's 7 million businesses on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So the winners and losers of a conversation around getting rid of TikTok today is different than the winners and losers of another level of TikTok.
Yeah, right.
There's the institutional investor who who stands to lose a lot of money, but then there's the actual person that runs a business off of TikTok.
Right. That's
And,
built
and we have to have a
business model selling, selling products via TikTok.
right.
You're going to shut down their entire, or 70% of their revenue overnight.
Right, because you don't have maybe the means on the other platforms. And so, I heard something interesting a couple of years ago where they were talking about how black and brown folks were actually over indexing in crypto.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that we were over indexing was the predilection to high risk, high reward.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, why poorer people or people who are trying to win tend to play the lottery more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a psychological thing. It's not a value-based judgment thing, but they tend to play the lottery more because there's a chance to win.
Yeah. Even if you lose every day, like the day you win, it clears the books. You're like, I'm straight.
It clears the books. So crypto was, and this is about 2 years ago. This crypto was like starting to look like that. And if you remember, a lot of rappers were telling people to do crypto around that time.
Mm-hmm.
Then they stopped. Now they're back up, which I think will go into our next conversation.
Yeah.
But like, we have to be thoughtful around if you're asking people to engage in it in an early stage. Also knowing the science, the pre-election, we have to be intentional about like who wins and loses, right? And that's why this kind of talk about meritocracy is so crazy, because what you could be doing is knowing someone has a predilection to something and allowing them to lose
Mm-hmm.
in the name of meritocracy versus listen, and this might be on us because I don't make rich white men the center of our world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's about what do we say to people like, hey, maybe some of y'all should get a Vanguard fund. Right? Some of y'all should get an index fund.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it ain't about the come up. It's not about the hustle, because the hustle leaves people lost. We find very few hustles that everyone wins.
Yeah.
Right? The hustle is a fast moving sport where you can have some happiness, but not everyone's happy. So that's just one thing about that. The other part about that I want to bring to bear that you shared is this idea of the regulatory class that, Andreessen and Horowitz and Musk and a lot of folks were railing against. And it was a group of other people who some might consider nerds that were like from the same schools, but had a different orientation.
Yeah.
Like the Revenge of Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
And like Linda Kahn and all her folks, like those were the people who went to Harvard, went to Yale, went to Berkeley, went to all the schools that all the tech folks went to, and came up with these answers about what they thought about the role of the administrative state and the overreach, to use that term again, of tech companies. And so those folks who had studied at those same places got in government. So instead of making money, they were in government talking about the overreach of the tech state. And so to fight the fact that they were there, you now go with the other guy who wants no rules.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of, to end of the day, there's a debate about kind of heft, speed, regulation, what it does. There's a lot there. But one thing is not deniable is that many of the administrative bodies that were during the Biden administration were populated by people who had came out of certain schools and had, had certain professors, shall we say. And so I just think, again, this is one of these things that it's like, okay, now people have put billions of dollars literally to shift systems. And we have to ask the question at all times, who benefits?
Right.
Just like we have to ask the question, with a heavy administrative state, who benefits? Like I'm not abject to having the conversation of, are there winners and losers, and sometimes unknown losers in the thing of administrative state? Because even if you don't like it, the fact that there's a more of administrative state means people who don't have the resources to fight the administrative state don't even participate.
Right. Right. It becomes a deterrence to engage.
It's a deterrent.
Because it's like
I'm not even getting into that industry because there's too many rules there. And those rules.
I don't have the overhead for the legal counsel to help us
right.
the documents.
So there's still only a certain amount of people that are going to be in certain spaces because they don't have the administrative overhead to fight that. So we could have that dialogue, but I don't think it should be lost about this concept of winners and losers in the sense of this broader tech space, and it's just broader. We're going to unleash innovation, and I don't want to be so boring as a innovation for who. But I want to say we should always think about communities that we care about. How do we do a deep dive into who wins and loses in the implementation of policy? Policy is great. Implementation is supreme.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how do we make sure that we're communicating that to make sure that people, see themselves in the win or minimize their risk?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's going to be fascinating, through this administration, and and I should say on the like the other side of the coin, like I do like meet people and people involved in some in the tech spaces and other roles, and then not everyone that I meet isn't like yeah, man, the government's trying to shut us down. Like, yeah, I know some great folks, especially in the startup space, and folks who talk about all of the ancillary careers and work within, especially these larger corporations. So not just the, like we can sometimes it could be construed that somehow maybe my concerns or I'll just say lack of respect from some of these people that have fantastic wealth and power to be up here really to me sound like I'm gonna take my ball and go home, or I'm gonna take my ball and go play with what's the name in them at the other court because I don't like y'all no more. That's how it sound to me. That's how I feel. And they could, maybe we'll have coffee one day and they'll tell me, Justice, you're being a little harsh on me. And I'll be like, well, make it make sense to me, my man. But if you feel so inclined, or don't, because you don't have to. Who the hell am I? You don't got to talk to me. So, in any event, the sense that we have to, like, whatever the industries may be, most of us are going to be working within or next to or adjacent to these industries and the things they do, because that's the way we make a living in this society. When you have a job within an entity that does a thing, whether it's a product or service or cleanup or whatever. And so as we're operating within this and we're talking about this time, and you got these individuals who want to shape basically this, what's going to be the next 4 years, and there's always overlap into, whatever the following administration looks like around business rules, how government will show up or not show up, how government will have impact or not impact, what type of oversight, what type of public engagement will be required, and what kind of public engagement, if you ignore it, you feel comfortable being like, hey man, we don't really got to talk to them. We just gonna do this thing we're gonna do, and people could be mad at us, and that's all right. That's on them. They can't hurt us or they can't stop it, right? Like these are the type of questions, I think that are gonna be coming up. I think for those of us organizing and working in community and trying to, as we see it, make a more fair, more open, spread the opportunity to be engaged, to use your skill, trade, or profession, for the livelihood of yourself and your family. It's not just a matter of like some sort of personal privilege or feeling about how these folks go and move and where they put in resources, right? If they don't want to, if they're going to build a major infrastructure project in your city and you've been fighting to get people into the construction unions for the last 15 years, and you've been training all these folks, and you've been building up credibility of training good folks, and then you got these contractors that built their businesses up, and then because they don't got to acknowledge no sort of like local agreements or nothing, they just gonna bring in some whole bunch of other people from another state to do all the work in your town, right? You know what I'm saying? Like y'all gonna be over there throwing stones, kicking cans, and being real mad. Like that's the kind of the when some of those questions that public officials may ask, like, yo, so what? You ain't hiring nobody from the local? What's the name union? You ain't hiring none of the contractors is incorporated in this state. Word. Like sometimes that's the stuff that they're pushing back against. In case some of y'all don't know. Because you might be like, well, they just want to grease the skids for the business, because the businessman, you start doing that, he's a businessman stuff. And it's like, yeah, and if he can do some kind of wizardry to charge someone that's going to charge 25% less money to do the same job, and maybe get a little shaky with the labor practices. These are like real things that happen, and sometimes we can assume that like government interlope may be only about like, I don't know, some sort of self-satisfying engagement, but sometimes it's going like, yo, did you follow our state contracting laws? Like, are these is everyone here uh licensed to do the jobs that they're doing, right? Are you Then when you get to those bigger, more complicated questions about like, relationship between industry and the communities you serve, and you know, what is your obligation, and is it cool if you uh you know is it better to get the job done fast, even if you pay people poorly and lots of folks got hurt along the way? Like, are we okay with that? We're talking about like construction and big projects like that. But then there's also other stuff that, I mean, you know, the United States is not still not the we're not at the top of the heap in chip manufacturing, and we talk about AI and mad computers, and I haven't heard a good answer about how we're going to get there. And it seems like the over reliance on a bunch of very small Ivy League schools that only take in like 2,000 people a year to produce a substantial leadership and workforce seems a little misguided. Maybe you need some different models. But guess who's never ever going to try no different models without public pressure? Large corporations. They gonna be like, nah, man, we shortest path of resistance, and then we flim flam the rest of the way, right? But if there's and not even just public pressure that's like negative, public pressure that's like, look, man, we have good ideas, but maybe this pathway you want to do it is wrong, and I know it's your money over there, but you might want to listen to some other voices about how you dispense that money, how you make your partnerships grow, how you look at staffing and capacity. And to me, sometimes it sounds very much like some of these folks, they don't want that. They don't want to have to think about saying no to something that might be a good idea. It may be a net good, but because it's not their idea, it's like, I don't really want to talk about it. That's how I feel. So I don't want to spend too much more time talking about the people, but that I guess I was trying to get somewhere that wasn't just Justice think he's gonna take dude milk money, you know what I'm saying, or something. First grade bully Justice. It would, matter, like, let me get that cookie. that's my cookie now. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's mine. You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway, I guess we'll probably have an opportunity to talk about that whole band of folks as the year goes on.
Yeah, that ain't going away. So, any all listeners, fortunately, unfortunately, depending on what your take on it, the influence of what is to come is not kind of like a one conversation and done. But yeah.
So let you got something else. I wanted to get to the other issue that has bubbled up out of the inauguration, particularly the presence of, and I'll say it this way because it's been framed this way, black male entertainers. You know, on the I don't know exactly what events they did or what type of shows. I don't know if they're all in the same show. Particularly Snoop, Nelly, Rick Ross. So who was the other person?
No, it was them three.
Okay, there's like a fourth person I saw somewhere. I don't remember who it is though, so they may not be somebody a part of my entertainment zeitgeist, so to speak, or whatever. But yeah. So this was, before we get to that, I do want to generally say whatever the email or text chat or Facebook, which is ironic if it was on Facebook, like be on various social media platforms of these people who may not hold us all in the most well esteem or well being, but to get the word out, like, hey, we ain't watching this inauguration. The amount of people I've encountered that are like, you ain't watched the inauguration, did you? I'm like, I wasn't planning to anyway. But yeah, so I just want to footnote that's hilarious how many people have brought that up over the last 24 hours, like to make sure like it was like a black people note to not watch, you know what I mean, that went out somewhere. So saying all that, what's your first thoughts on because Snoop getting some heat? Nelly's got the super heat, it appears. Like people really, it seems like Nelly getting more heat than anybody, which I find kind of ironic.
Yeah.
If you knew who Nelly's audience was in the at the height of his time, and I can tell y'all this, and I think I've said this. I had to drive from Pittsburgh to New York and New Jersey in the summer of 2000 or like May or whatever 2000 no 2003, and the CD thing wasn't working in the car I was in, and I had to listen to the radio, and they played a whole lot of Nelly in between whatever the radio stations in between Philadelphia and
Oh,
Pittsburgh.
right.
They played a whole lot of Nelly, and they wasn't playing a whole lot of other stuff. So just anyway. So yeah, I wanted to get what's some of your thoughts on
So
arts and the hubbub about it
I
all.
know that you just dropped a broadside, against it's global capitalism. So um here's my thing about, if Snoop, again, this is this Overton window, kind of goes back to this concept. In 2016, you were leading the revolution against something. In 2024, for some reason or other, everyone's just been like, oh, this is the reality we're faced with.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can make a judgment on that. I also want to it does go back to this conversation around crypto. If you performed at a crypto ball and you had investments in crypto, no matter what, wherever your take on it was, to me, even if it's Donald Trump, it doesn't mean I wouldn't, that I don't knock you as much for going to a crypto ball. That's my take on it. Like, because you're investing in it.
Yeah,
For example, if someone said for whatever reason, Donald Trump would like to invite you to the Community Development Summit ball, right? Now, one of you go, I won't even give him the credibility of showing my face. And then there's the reality of, well, if they invited you, who's going to tell them that you don't like what they're thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to have someone else tell them you don't like what they're thinking? Or are you going to tell them you don't like what they're thinking and this is something else you should think, to your point around the conversation?
Mm-hmm.
So I do think when, and history is replete with when Black folks had to go to Nixon's ball, to Reagan's events,
Mm-hmm.
to all these events and be like, hey, thanks for the invite. I got my tux. Not really happy with half the stuff y'all said. I'd like to talk to you about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's how change occurs. So I think part of it is we have this idea now of social media activism and social media advocacy, which dovetails with some of the grunt work of working in systems who are openly saying things that are not helpful to you.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not responsible to still go into those rooms because someone will say you're a sellout because you showed up. Now, again, that's a little more in the weeds than if Snoop has a lot of investments in crypto, or Rick Ross has a lot of investments in crypto. I don't know. But I would surmise if they had those investments and it was a ball before, I'm not sitting dying on that hill. But I also think it's representative of the Democratic Party, and I'm going to extend it as a Black folks' problem with entertainers meaning more than they should about their decisions.
Yeah.
Like Snoop's decisions, when they cut positive, great. When they cut bad, so what?
Yeah.
because he's not my uncle. Right? Blue's my uncle. Wayne's my uncle. He's not my uncle. He's not people I look for and say that I need them to maintain a consistency of character.
Yeah.
And we got to stop expecting athletes and musicians and otherwise social media folks to maintain that. Listen, if Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was like that, yes. If Bill Russell, that was a benefit. That was extra because you also had an infrastructure of Black men and women, brown men and women of all backgrounds who were also doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
So even the fact that we're having this dialogue and it being like, well, is Chrisette Michelle, is they gonna get canceled like Chrisette Michelle got canceled?
And I like Chrisette Michelle. They cut that. I ain't seen that. I mean, I know she's still out there in the world, but it's like, damn, y'all really did the sister bad, man. Like she ain't. Let her get that check, man. She good. Like you
Y'all
know.
canceling people like again, and listen, I don't want to do this, but I have to share this. Part of this is the very kind of stoked idea, the idea that develops of like if someone does something you don't agree with,
Mm-hmm.
then with their career,
Yeah.
then you're banishing them forever. Are you looking at the sum total of who they are? Because we disagree with people who we know all the time.
Yeah.
We disagree with what elected officials' decisions they make. We disagree with family members' decisions that they make.
Yep.
When did athletes and musicians get the space to be so respected in our communities that if they made one call, we ain't talking to them no more? Like it's some so, and I think to your point about Nelly too, we should not confuse Nelly's musical audience has skewed white for some time.
Yeah. It, it,
Like
it, it,
go ahead.
it's especially with the hippity hop and the rap and the pop music. Because just and I'll say this, maybe I will express the potential bias of the wounded artist that goes, well, we was doing that off the wall back to Africa shit. You know what I'm saying? Y'all out here trying to like save the people with all this music y'all making.
That guy body shit.
I just want to dance, Justice. Sometimes I just want to dance. I don't care what they talking about. I just want to dance, brother. I'm just trying to get in there, and holler at these ladies and let it pop. You know what I'm saying? Justice. You know what I'm saying? Why you gotta come here with all this making me think? And then, so you want that, and then later, when the music pervade on that notion takes the check from whoever's cashing it, you want them to find religion. Like, come on, dog. I don't. You people are not serious people. You're not serious. Like I understand why y'all mad. You and your feelings. You mad about the election. Woo 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 woo. But y'all like, when we get into the rigor, nectar and the rigor, it's like, yo, you. I know some of y'all get to opt in and out of the liberatory struggle, right?
Mm.
And some of us is like, nah, B. I tell people all the time, I still don't eat at Denny's. I don't know when people
Right.
stop the boycott, but guess who's still on the boycott? Me. I ain't never
Right.
eaten at no Denny's. I don't care what they do. They could send us all to school. They could come out, look, we giving all the black kids scholarships for the next 6 years. I'll be like, good way to catch up. I ain't getting no Rudy Tooty, Fresh or Fruity or whatever it is y'all serve up in there because you
Is
missed the
that's
opportunity to be righteous the first time. I'm out, right? Some of y'all, some of us, and it could be said, living in a oppressive, complicated state, you gotta like sometimes look, well, they got the good crackers over there, and I can't find them crackers nowhere else. I don't know. I might have to go up in that store, right? Like, but this idea of like, there's limits to how you say righteousness via consumerism, but the specific when it gets to music, it'd be like, look, this was music. It was a party, and you go and you dance to it. And it's supposed to be fun, and you're not too serious. But then that person is supposed to be part of some solidarity movement as it pertains to like who you gonna perform for or not perform for. Like
yeah.
really, really, like we really, really like this. You know what I'm saying? Like we really on. That's what we
Yeah.
on now. Like, look, that don't mean some of y'all don't gotta give Nelly smoke if you know him personally or whatever. I guess, but I'm sure for him, he probably like, damn, I thought I ain't been invited. The one clip I did, he's like, I think it was Willie D. I listened to a little bit. He was like, I ain't never been invited to perform at no president inauguration. I'm like, yo, I'm about to go. I could see the idea that I'm gonna go do this. It's a gig. It ain't. I'm not deciding that I'm backing their position on contraceptive in healthcare plans.
No, it's a crypto ball. That's what I'm saying. It's a ball about crypto. And if you fall in a place where you support it, then why would you not go perform for the money to support it? He's already president. Now, again, Snoop, his 2017 super down with the people, that maybe that didn't age well. But guess what? Musicians' perspectives don't age well.
Yeah.
Why? Because they didn't sign up to be activists. They didn't sign up to be organizers, unless that person was probably an organizer or an activist or an advocate before they started doing music.
Right. Right.
But we put way too much on all these artists and try to hold them to a degree of accountability for music that you don't buy anyway.
Yeah. You know, the other thought, even especially with Snoop, you know, when we talked about, you know, the fascinating reality of Snoop as ambassador to America at the Olympics, you know, you can't be ambassador to America and then, you know, again, and if it's a crypto ball that you down with them anyway and they doing a thing because the crypto people is down with Trump and they obviously feel like they about to get their wings back, right, under this administration, after the last administration. Clearly, I mean, like I said, I still think crypto is a little sketchy at best. However, you know, whatever. There's all kinds of sketchy stuff we got money invested in as a country. Um, the the notion that now the ambassador to the world and everyone loves Snoop is gonna be like, nah, I don't rock with the current president, so I ain't coming. Like you got he in for America, you in for America, dog. Like now that don't mean that also on the other hand that you gotta be happy with him. But I think about it like if we truly in community with each other, there's stuff, the decisions you could make that I don't agree with. I can decide one not to watch and go with you when you make those decisions. If I have a proximity relationship with you where we're actually not just in community in like a broader sense of like having a similar background, but like we actually know each other. Maybe when me and you have run into each other, like, hey man, can I talk to you for a minute? You know, I'm gonna tell you how I felt about that thing that happened, and then you could talk about it or choose not to talk about it, and we can have an understanding of dialogue. I can let you know I still care about your life and your well being, man. That's a little hurt by that, and as I like to say, I'm done then. Once I say, like, if I'm really like offended or hurt or whatever, once I let you know about it, I don't need you to do nothing else. Cause I was concerned. Like I
Right.
was concerned about how I felt about you. You don't have to like make me happy now. I just wanted to let you know, and for my own sense of self, I needed to say that I said it to you. And then I can guess what I could do. Move on. That doesn't mean, you know, and if we wasn't like that before, we was hanging out, having cookouts together and shit, we probably not gonna start having cookouts and shit. If we was having cookouts and stuff, the cookouts might be a little weird for the first couple ones. And then at some point it might, it's water under the bridge, we move on. But we have this, and it is the thing that I think I appreciate that you animated and elevated with the like, I don't like what you did, so I get to be out on you. So that aspect, and it's this other aspect that I think is gonna we really got to engage with. We do this thing where we act like there's an agreed upon code on like broad code, and everybody ain't on the same code, and we didn't talk
Right.
about the code, and we didn't really agree. And then we get into like picking when people is off of the code and they broke it or they did this, they went the wrong way. You know, Kendrick is going to perform in the Super Bowl. I don't know. I like Kendrick. You know, some people could say just any iteration of Kendrick Lamar performing at the Super Bowl would seem some way counter to how we perceive Kendrick within the perception, within proximity to his peers in the rap world as it currently exists. There's the other part of me would go like Kendrick is as popular as anyone else. As any other contemporary artist that could perform at the Super Bowl. So why wouldn't he? Right? Like it's a if we don't if we don't wrestle with this stuff, I feel like there was a time, it was a little clearer like who was in and who was out, and what I'm saying, like Public Enemy never go to. I think I'm pretty sure Public Enemy has a somewhere in the song said they ain't never gonna be to perform at the Super Bowl. I don't remember if that said, but it seems like something that I've heard in a Public Enemy song. You know what I'm saying? That could be wrong, right? But it definitely would have been at the '88 Super Bowl if you know what I'm saying, or like '91. You know what I'm saying? Can't Trust It came blaring out the speakers. Like I don't think America would have been ready for that. like
Right.
like and we all would have understood it, right? But the context of the time, we all knew what time it is. The context has changed. The context is muddled. It's all over the place. You know what I'm saying? We don't even always get into close comfort with like what's right and wrong in the public space unless it's like on very specific, like, like the space, I guess I would say the Overton window on that area has moved to a place where, there's a whole lot of stuff we just don't talk about in public.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of go like, bring that up. You know what I mean? And then because of the nature of the way media and social media especially kind of becomes this transfer point for where we get the voice, what people are mad about and not mad about. It's like, yeah, we all out on the third director of some movie because we found out that he said this at a thing and he didn't get this other person a good enough shot. So we hate him now or her now because everybody loved Lizzo, and then they was like Lizzo is hard on their dancers, and they was like, I don't know how we feel about Lizzo. For a couple minutes, people moved on pretty fast, but for a couple minutes, they was like, man, Lizzo out here going hard on the dancers. You ever been involved in entertainment, brother? Yeah, everyone's hard on the dancers. I ain't saying it's right.
Right.
But color me totally unsurprised if a major performer was hard on the dance crew. Everyone knows it happens. Like why?
But that's the thing. That's the we are showing how much we're down via our response to musicians and athletes.
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah.
Like, no, that's fine. But like you said, like, man, I remember I couldn't wear Reeboks, couldn't buy Coca-Cola.
True.
You know what I mean? Like a whole bunch true, but so there's a whole bunch of stuff, man, you couldn't do at a certain time because you was utilizing the power of the boycott. Now we're using, and what's interesting as we're building about this, we use our attention and our attitude as a unit of activity.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being like, oh, I'm just not buying Coca-Cola. Why? Because they participate with South African government and they're supportive of apartheid. Right? Like, I'm not buying Reebok. Why? Because they support apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're like, I don't like Snoop. Why? Because Snoop said something 8 years ago and he went back on it. For Donald Trump, and I don't like him. Okay, that's fine. But the unit here is not connected to like something that, and especially when you don't connect it to actual activity. So the piece about this is, okay, you don't like Donald Trump. Okay, that's fair. You voted against him. If you're a woman, you went to the 92%. If you're a man, whatever. But like, also, what are you going to do to protect the people that are going to be harmed versus you just don't like them?
Yeah.
Because there's people starting right now, there are people hiding in their homes.
Yeah.
There are people who are scared to come out. And I want to note this, they don't all speak Spanish.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who come across the Darien Gap. There's a lot of people who get to that border. And they aren't just from South America. They're not just from, the countries of Central and South America. They're people from everywhere. And so that's fine if you think your unit of attention and attitude, and I said what I said, or canceling somebody is worth something versus what's going to harm people and a participatory activism or advocacy in that.
Mm-hmm.
And some people could say, well, I use what I got. Yes, but you have a lot of tools now. So yes, you have the tools of attention. You have the tools of behavior, but you also have the tools of what group of people are protecting people who are literally hiding, children and families that are hiding because they're scared to be seen.
Yep.
Right. And for Black folks, I think it's important for us to remember it ain't that long ago where in certain places you wasn't coming out at certain times at night because you were scared to be seen.
Yep.
It wasn't too long ago that you was in a car and wouldn't stop certain places. The Green Book exists because you couldn't stop everywhere.
Yep.
So there's people now who are having the same feeling for their children and them and their families. And instead of lifting up that that's the issue, you mad at somebody like Rick Ross that has shown you. I mean, I like Rick Ross' early music, but Rick Ross he's never shown he has any regard for the black community in any tangible way.
Yeah.
So I spend time talking about him versus the policies that go into play tomorrow. Sometimes we create this fantasy world of our own where, again, going back to this tech company, I mean, the connections are fascinating, where the unit of attention becomes the currency that we privilege over all.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not really, I mean, in some ways similar to, you know, what I felt in some of those readings and in that piece with Andreessen. This sounds like this is about how you feel about you versus how we gonna look out for us. And you know, I guess I is a core thing for me to think about the basics for myself. But then ultimately, if something means it's going to be harder on me, but the rest of like us is going to be better, then I could let it go, man. Like we need the us needs to do well. Like if I got to get up earlier, you know what I mean, or I got to work later, or I got to take on a little more responsibility, or I gotta say something in a meeting that's going to discomfort people, but it's going to make sure other people are taken care of. That's what you do. You know what I'm saying? And me making a long Facebook post about how mad I am at these black rappers now. When I was rapping in my days, you know what I'm saying, I would have never went to Donald Trump's party. Like, who does that help? That doesn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's about me. That makes people go like, "Oh, Justice the real one." Yeah, Justice serious. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? I don't need to, I don't seek nor do I wish to cultivate that sort of how you say validation in the world. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean, with validation, that's copy. One day we should probably have a validation conversation. I don't think we've had like an explicit because validation is an ill thing. People be out here trying, get people to look at me. Stamp me. Give me the approval. You know what I mean? They'd be like, yeah.
Well, again, I mean, I think it is a phenomenon that has become bigger given our current space where validation and engagement has turned into a degree of validation, right? Where it could be engagement, but people are gonna look to see how many people like the what you shared.
Yeah.
Right. It's no accident that recently, Instagram and them have gotten rid of showing you exactly how many people like something.
Yeah.
For other people.
Mm-hmm.
They show you, but they don't show you for everybody.
Yeah.
Because we get validation by who hit a thing and what that means. And when we start to think about, and I'll stop here, the virtual corner or the virtual schoolyard versus the real schoolyard, where, we was coming up, where you wanted to get your validation was the schoolyard, was the bus stop, was the gym, the rec center, right? That was the place you got your validation. That's when somebody looks at your sneakers. Like, okay, that's Polo. Okay, but you got that in New York, right? Remember that? You got that up in New York.
Got that in New York, right? Yeah, got that in New York. Yeah.
You got that in New York. No, you got that shit. What's my job in Berlin or
Berlin Mark. Yeah,
Berlin
Mark.
Columbus Mark. Yeah, I told Bugs I got my Euro hikers. Oh man, you must have got them in New York. Man, I got them in Berlin on a Saturday afternoon. But that was the square. In this day and time, the square is not in real life for young people or for adults.
Yeah.
The square is the internet. And not just for children. Like I said, not just for children. It's for all of us. So I just think where it moves us to psychologically is something we have to be thoughtful around to as you said, be in community, not just as an idea, but a true practice and in a community that benefits people. Because there's all kind of communities in some senses,
Yeah. It's not.
right?
Yeah.
It's not as like we use it and kind of indicate that its nature of it is healthy, but it ain't all healthy to be in community.
Yeah.
So I think we need to talk about that healthy community and how our actions and our activism and our advocacy and our general thoughts lead us towards that.
Yeah. So with that, be safe. Don't take any wooden nickels. Don't stand up in a rowboat. One thing I will say, just leave on a positive note. And I didn't prep you on this one, but I had saw that Leonard Peltier was released. Was given clemency by Biden on the way out. So, old Joe on the way out.
Hey, I'm gonna say it. Biden did some of the blackest and most activist shit. I'm gonna just say it. He did some of the listen. He pardoned Marcus Garvey, Jack.
Right, and Marcus Garvey. My bad. I didn't even. I was so excited about Peltier because that's the last one I heard. I forgot he pardoned Mark Garvey too.
He pardoned Mark Garvey and Leonard Peltier, and he commuted the sentence of 2,000 brothers and sisters, like largely black. So I'm not saying black and brown. So when I say brothers and sisters, I'm saying it because they're largely black and brown, who received unfair sentences for crack versus cocaine. Like huge. So I think there's a conversation at some juncture you have to have, again, weighing the good and bad when it's all said and done versus like this judgment we have of like, you should have gotten out so Pete Buttigieg could have run for president in laws just like Kamala Harris did. Woman may beat you up like your father. Like, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? I'm a beat. Like, I just think there was a tsunami, Jack, and the Trump tsunami was a Trump tsunami, because of the change. But when Leonard Peltier, Marcus Garvey, 2,500 people, and then we juxtapose that where Trump just pardoned. It came up 1,500 people who participated in January 6th. He pardoned 1,500 people who you've seen do something.
Right. That is wildly illegal. You don't need to be a scholar to know you ain't supposed to be hopping over them running up in the Capitol. Like I don't.
Like none of us could do that.
None of us would do that and think they're supposed to let us go. Right? Like they maybe give us a lighter sentence. Maybe they go like, look, it was things got out of hand. But ultimately, you do that act, you should know what time it is. Like, if they get me, they gonna send me to jail forever. Like that was the deal when you throw this fight against the system. If when you're actually oppressed. But for other people, maybe it's different.
So yeah, man. I just shout out to Joe for that, man. Like shout out to the brothers and sisters fighting for Leonard Peltier to be released.
Yes, sir.
For over 40 years, almost 50 years, and can't do nothing but get that respect. And it does show who you have around you matters.
Yep. Absolutely. So with that, I say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, Majestic. Good Brothers is a part of the Ask Your Oldhead podcast. And you can support the podcast by listening, rating, subscribing, sharing, and searching me on Patreon and becoming a patron. You can also support the podcast. That's Justice Rajee on Patreon. You can also buy you a sweatshirt. You know what I'm saying? You can just hit the Cash App. It's my name. You know what I'm saying? On the Cash App. Send the brother a 5-piece. You know what I mean? As I said at the end of the last one. So if you listening this long, you really like the show. So, changes are coming. No lies told. You know what I'm saying? All my researchers, all my scientists, you know what I'm saying? They all on this. But, thank you for your support. Again, please share. And we'll be back. Peace.